everyone, I'm Rachel Bateman. I've got a real quick video for you today because I am knee-deep in Halloween sewing. I have costumes to get done in 2 days and they're just like piles of fabric right now, so I need to get back to my sewing machine and back to work. But first I wanted to jump on and do a quick video about ellipses and dashes in your screenplay. This was a suggested video by Batman 1987 in the comments of my what not to write in your spec script video, so thank you so much for that. Between finishing my edits on Make the Fireflies Dance and outlining the stars at night for NaNoWriMo and all this Halloween sewing, I had no idea what my next video was going to be about, so I appreciate the suggestion. So I'm going to jump right in to ellipses and dashes. What do they look like? How are they used in a screenplay? When would we use them? Why do we use them? And I'm going to lump them kind of together because the short answer is that they are used for the same thing in screenplays. And depending on who the writer is, they're often very interchangeable. I personally have a view of when to use each one because it improves readability for me and changes the tone and the mood of the screenplay depending on which you use, but they can be used in the same way. So I'm just going to talk about ways they are used and then give a little bit of a difference between an ellipsis and a dash in each situation to kind of show you how they're used and give you an idea of which you might prefer and which might work best for your book. I'll also talk about which ones I prefer because I definitely have a preference depending on what I am doing. So first, let's just talk about what they look like so you know what you're looking for as you're reading a screenplay and I'm talking about this. An ellipses is those three little dots, dot, 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 that you might see at the end of a sentence or in the middle of a sentence. If it is at the end of a sentence, if it is a complete sentence, you'll actually have dot, dot, dot for your ellipses, and then a period or a question mark or an exclamation point or whatever punctuation might be at the end of that sentence normally. So you might end up with 4 dots or 3 dots and a question mark, but the ellipsis itself is the 3 little dots. Dashes, there are actually different lengths of dashes depending on what you want to do. This applies more to like prose novel writing typically, but I'm going to go over them real quick and then talk about how we see them in screenplays. So the first one is the hyphen, and that is your shortest little dash, and it can be used to like indicate a false start or stuttering in talking or to put 2 words together into a hyphenated word. That's why they're called that. The next length is called an N dash. And that is typically just used for like a range between these 2 years, 1987 to 1999, the dash in between those 2 years, that's an N dash. We rarely will use an N dash in our normal daily writing. An M dash is what people are typically talking about when they talk about dashes in screenplays. That is the longest dash you have in your writing. It's called an M dash because in a non-monospace font, you have a hyphen, which is short, and your N dash is as wide as the N character in that font, and your M dash is as wide as the M character in your font. In screenplays, we write in Courier, which is a monospace font, meaning every single character takes up the exact same amount of space, which means the hyphen, the N dash, and the M dash all take up the exact amount of space, so they are no different. So in a screenplay, you're going to use a hyphen for, again, stuttering, false starts, or hyphenated words, and a double hyphen, a double dash, in place of an M dash. So we don't really use M dashes in screenplays so much, but we do have that double dash is what we will use to indicate the M dash. That's what they look like. So now how do we use them? I'm going to start with dialogue. Both the ellipsis and the double dash are going to indicate a pause or a break in dialogue. If you're reading a screenplay, sometimes you'll see someone talking and then parentheses pause or beat, and then they talk more. The ellipsis and the M dash can do that exact same thing. They indicate that pause, and they are less intrusive to the reader than actually saying pause or beat. So you might have someone talk and they kind of trail off their train of thought and you'll have an ellipsis there at the end, or they're talking and you want to indicate that they stop talking for a bit and then pick back up, and you'll do ellipses and then pick back up. The ellipses indicates a much more subtle trailing off of the thought, whereas the double dash is going to be a sudden, abrupt halt. This happens often when someone gets interrupted. They'll be talking and then double dash, and then the next character will start talking, and then double dash at the beginning of the next character's speech to indicate that they have just interrupted the previous character. And then they will continue talking. I use this in my Lake Wayne screenplay when Marley is talking and her mom interrupts her. We are exterior fire pit later. McCartney, we got you so good. Marley, screw you. Mom, double dash to indicate that this thought has just been abruptly interrupted. And then Alice, double dash to indicate she interrupted that last thought. So those 2 dashes kind of connect across the screenplay to show that they are right on top of each other. And sorry, kiddo, if you want to stay up with the big kids, you gotta put up with their pranks. So those dashes show how abrupt that is. Sometimes you'll see where someone uses an ellipsis where another character is cutting them off, and it works. It's just not as effective to me as that abrupt double dash showing like this is stopping because someone's talking over you. That can also be used if no one's interrupting, but someone's talking and then they abruptly stop for another reason. They saw something that shocked them or whatever, and their speech just cuts off. The double dash is much more abrupt, whereas the ellipsis kind of trails off. And this happens in the middle of dialogue too. Like I said, you could use them in the place of pause or beat, whether that's kind of the trailing ellipsis or just kind of a really abrupt stop and start with the double dash. I do want to say though, use ellipses and double dashes very, very sparingly in your dialogue. I feel like the ellipsis is maybe the most overused and abused bit of screenwriting because it is so easy to put them in to try to indicate exactly how you want the dialogue to be spoken. And just like overusing parentheticals, that's insulting to your actors. Let them figure out how they're going to deliver the dialogue. Let them interpret the character and interpret your script and give a performance. You don't have to micromanage every single thing your actors are doing and putting each individual pause or beat. Hello, cat. Putting in these ellipses and double dashes for every single pause or beat that you want throughout the dialogue is micromanaging them. Let them do their job, you do yours, and just tell the story. Moving on to your action lines, ellipses and em dashes can be used for pauses and beats in the action as well. We see that a lot, but also this is a nice little trick to give you a little bit more control over how the screenplay is viewed. And I know I just said like you don't need to micromanage, don't put them in too much. But we talked about how you don't put camera angles and cuts and different shot directions in your screenplay, and that is left up to the director. But this is a little trick to kind of give more of what you're envisioning into the screenplay, and that is that both ellipses and em dashes can be used to indicate different shots within the action. One quick way to indicate a different shot, a different camera angle, is just to break down to another paragraph. Each paragraph in action typically indicates a new shot, but you can do this throughout one paragraph too to indicate a series of shots throughout the action you're telling. So I'll be using Kevin Williamson's screenplay for Scream. I use it all the time. I actually keep the first scene printed off in my office to reference for videos like this because it has basically everything I need in it. So going back to that Scream screenplay, we are in this opening scene with Drew Barrymore, and she has just gone back on her whole I don't have a boyfriend thing, and she's like, no, I do, I have a boyfriend, he's gonna be here any minute, he's big and he plays football and he's gonna kick your ass, and he says his name wouldn't be Steve, would it? And we have this dread, and he tells her to go back and turn on the patio light again. So this is her as she's going. Casey, terrified, forces herself to move, ... staggering to the kitchen, ... to the glass doors. Her shaky hand finds the light switch, ... She hits it. The backyard is lit. So we have these ellipses in there that can indicate different shots to take, different focuses the director can have as they're shooting this action. You can do this with the double dash as well. In fact, a lot of writers do use the double dash to break up their different shots within a scene like that. But it really just depends on the mood and the tone and the feel you're going for your screenplay. The ellipsis is a much slower feel than the double dash, which is just like breakneck action. So if I'm reading a series of shots that have double dashes between them, I read them like bam, 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 bam. This is what's happening. It's go, 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 go. And you might feel like that's what you want for horror because you want to be intense. But that slowing down with these ellipses, it builds the suspense. It not only shows the shots that can be taken through this little scene, but it gives that feel of, okay, linger here for a minute. Build that dread, build that suspense. And that is something that these are great at doing, is just building the suspense. If we actually rewind a bit and go a little earlier in that scene, we have Casey talking with this guy and kind of flirting because he's being flirty. And then she's like, why do you want to know my name? And he says, because I want to know who I'm looking at. And suddenly everything changes. It's no longer fun and lighthearted and innocent and flirty. Now it's like creepy. and she's not okay with it, and she's going to hang up, and he tells her not to, and she does anyway. So we have click. Casey hangs up. She checks the glass door, making sure it's locked, and then moves to the stove as ... Next line, the phone rings. That ... that ellipsis at the end, it slows things down to build the suspense to the phone ringing. I also use this in Lake Blaine. We have the scene with McCartney at the lakeside, and she's kind of running through the bushes and keeps looking behind her, and she's obviously nervous. And we have Mac pushes past a dense bush, stepping on a thick branch. Crack. It breaks beneath her weight. Her breath is fast and heavy now. She stumbles, rights herself, takes another step when ... Slow it down. Build that suspense a little bit. Drop to the next line. Her arm is grabbed from behind. If you've read the Hunger Game books, Suzanne Collins did this a lot in those books. And it's been a long time since I read them, but I think she actually preferred the M- to the ellipses in this situation, where she would be building up the action and suspense, and then M-, the end of a paragraph, drop down to the next paragraph to have a turn and to have the next thing happen that is really impactful for you. So these can be used interchangeably in this way. It really just depends on how you personally want to do it. For me, the double dash reads a lot faster and more intense and just almost too breakneck, whereas the ellipses slows things down a bit and kind of gives me more of a feel for what's happening. Now, the one place I would not use an ellipsis in a series of shots is when you're writing an actual montage, and then I would use a hyphen, not a double dash, a hyphen, and do it as a list, not all in one action with those hyphens between it. So you would say, you know, a series of shots, or even just begin montage, and then have hyphen list of all the shots you want to have, and then end your montage. That's the place where you definitely want to use a dash and not a double dash, just the hyphen, to do that instead of using the ellipsis. But everywhere else, they are fairly interchangeable. It again just depends on your personal preference and how you feel like it helps your script read. Because when you're writing a spec script, remember your main goal is the readability of that script. You want to help the reader make it through and pull them along and not really have any stumbling blocks in the way. You don't want to put things in there that are going to make it harder to read. Really just think about what you're trying to say with your scene and how you're trying to get the story across. Do you want the abruptness of the double dash, or do you want more of the trailing off of the ellipsis? Play around with it. See which one reads better for you and which one makes it easier to read through your script. And again, remember, it's not your job to micromanage what your actors do, so don't go overboard with the ellipses in your dialogue. It is wildly overused and not necessary. Your actors are smart. They'll figure out what to do. They know how to interpret their characters. Don't try to do their job for them. I hope this video was helpful for you and answered the questions that you have. If there are more questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. If you've not subscribed to my channel already, go ahead and do so now and ring that little bell so you're notified of my future videos. I'm gonna hop off now and get back to sewing Halloween costumes. I am Rachel Bateman. I'll see you back here next time.